mitzvosecha, v'roi mamtanu mikol hashoynes, kirashtanu mitzvosecha, v'kelavtanu magenu la'avodosecha, v'kelavtanu magenu la'avodosecha, v'necho ha'gadol, ha'gadol, ha'kadosh, aleinu, aleinu, karasah.
Okay, we are on page AyinBase 14. 5 lines from the top, and the line starts with word ha-hagbalah. So being explained something very phenomenal principle. Essentially, that oir can funnel through a very limited and definitive channels, and yet it retains its its fundamental limitlessness, fundamental primary reality, as it is coming from its source. We discussed this yesterday, that we see this from life from the neshama. And for this reason, we're saying that the kav means the entire process of the Seder Hishtalshelus, and all this, the 10 sphirot throughout all the different levels. Although there is a union of ha-hagbalah, there is the definitive limits are applied to each madrega. It retains an element of Ein Sof. It has an Ein Sof quality. And we touched upon this yesterday, the Ein Sof quality of it. And to bring it back, that in fact we see it in the human being. The life element in the human being is from the neshama. The neshama is a godly presence, an essential, an essence, and a godly essence. This neshama is imbued into the human being, and primarily, first and foremost, is in the brain. This is where neshama is mislabish first. And this is why in the brain there are sensitivities beyond world, totally. And then from that, it continues to be disseminated throughout the entire body. And in the body there are all kinds of different parts. There's the heart, which is extremely sensitive. Then there is the different organs and different levels, all the way down to the foot, all the way down to the pinky of the foot, which has and he says that the heel is like the malach hamova sheba'odam. Should we hear that? The heel is like a malach because it has the least amount of chayes, of sensitivity, and yet there is a life element in there. And that life element is limitless, as is evidence from the fact that should it be damaged, should there be a cut on the heel, it will heal. Why will it heal? Because the life element in it has not been affected. It's not dependent on the receptacle. It's not dependent of its presence. It's being rejuvenated all the time from its source, and therefore it retains the quality of the source. This is a phenomenal Inyan. This is why that we have in the Moshel over here. The Rebbe talks about not the Moshel, the Nimshel, the way it is Lamailo. He speaks about and what it says in Zohar, Adu the Choshen Lim Yachad Linat. All the spheres are interconnected, inter-included between each other, even though they are very different, opposites, Chesed and Gvura and so forth. That's because of the Oyer Ein Sof that is there, but it's not Oyer Ein Sof. It's limited. It still retains the quality of Ein Sof. And how is this? And this is the point which I'd like that you should understand. We continue to come back to this principle. The reason that it retains the Ein Sof quality is that Oyer at all levels is always pointing to its source. It never becomes an entity unto itself. In our Moshel, the most obvious Moshel again, in our day and age, because that becomes a challenge, but nevertheless, this is something which we can, if we focus, we can really recognize. The sun emanates light. This light, there are many different ways of looking at this light, but in essence, again, this is why we need a little focus, a little seichel. It emanates pure light, not because the sun has heat. This is to camouflage, to conceal the real essence of this light. This light is not dependent on the solar nature. As we know that the light essentially was created the first day of creation before the sun was even created. And then it was concealed so that it will not disrupt the nature, the process of the worldly process. It's something here without a source. But essentially, this is an essential union from light. And when we have light, daylight, it is true that we have light right here, but this light is not an independent presence. This light is the presence of the sun. And this is why it has the quality to say that we have, the Pasuk says, we say it in davening very often Shabbos, that the sun rules the day. What does it mean the sun rules the day? L'mamshelas b'Ayin. It rules the day means that it transforms the entire existence, the entire world, as becoming something that it rules it. It affects in every aspect of the world by its presence. And this is not the light that emanates, that journeys through space. This is the actual presence of sun itself. And this is why it has this quality of limitlessness, of primary reality. Okay, let's try to go inside. Okay, as I said, it's 5 lines from the top of the page, AyinBase 14. The line begins ha-hagbalah. And the kav has the quality that it combines and can correlate all opposites. Hainu, and that is mipnei shehu me'ein ha'oyer ein sof shelifnei hatzimtzum. It is due to the fact that this kav, even though the kav means that this is a focused light that comes after the tzimtzum, The tzimtzum, prior to the tzimtzum, the oir is not separate from its source, from the moir. But the tzimtzum affects that this naturally present light is retracted, is condensed, and that becomes a tzimtzum. And then there is a trickle of light that continues to go through the tzimtzum. That trickle of light retains a quality of the light as it was before the tzimtzum, even though it goes through a funnel and it is very limited. And it retains the quality of the light of the tzimtzum. Rak, except shilifnei hatzimtzum, that before the tzimtzum lo yesh his chalkus protim klal, there are no subdivisions of entities that are contained in this light. Validei hakav, and then as a result of the kav,
excuse me, the tzimtzum is the kav?
The tzimtzum creates a kav. The tzimtzum is before the kav. Validei hakav.
But when that it trickles down through the kav?
It trickles down, right. It goes, the light, the oil goes through the tzimtzum, and that becomes a kav. That's like a trickle of the oil in soif. But the hakav nase his kalalus madreges protius. And then the kav affects and brings to the forefront, and see how madreges protius, individual madreges, are interconnected, interincluded. Harei shehu me'ein ho'ir in soif. Therefore, that way we see that it retains the quality of Ayin soif. That's why it is able to correlate opposites. These are extremely elusive concepts, but just to get to the concept itself, even if we don't really grasp it, just to know what we are referring to. I mentioned many times in the kochas hanefesh, in the seichel, which is the primary source for the dissemination of life into the human being. It starts from chochmah. Above chochmah, there is the nefesh, there is rotzen and oneg. This is the real life. Rotzen and oneg, this is the real experience of life. The will of life and the oneg of life, this is the real experience of life. And that goes through chochmah. Chochmah is likened in Chassidus to sight, to the faculty of sight. We discuss this all the time. Sight is really a phenomenal presence. It defies understanding. It does not fit into any worldly mold. In what way? There is sight, and then there are other faculties. There is hearing, which is also a very fine faculty. Then there's touch, there's taste. There are all kinds of different kinds. And sight is unique. In what way is it unique? In all of the other faculties, all other senses, you sense a finite entity. You touch this piece. You don't touch the whole table, you touch this piece of the table. You hear one sound at a time. sight, we also see through a lens, a very limited lens, but it is not limited to the size of the lens of what you see. You see the entire panorama at a glance. An unlimited view. And in this, as we discussed many times, there is really a phenomenal breakthrough, something that does not lend itself to be really modeled and put into a mold, because we see the physical world. The physical world, the physical space, is subdivisible into little pieces. You see miles and miles and miles. Each mile is a presence. So how do you see miles and miles and miles at a glance in one instant? And here you can regularly see how sight is different than all other faculties. Like you said, when you touch one piece at a time. In sight, you see the entire panorama at a glance, everything included. So we explained many times, the sensation of sight is a completely different experience than like in touch. In touch, we touch the table, for example. Touch the table. When we touch the table, you with me? When you touch the table, you touch the presence, the physical presence of the table. You're not touching the table in this room, in the Beis Medrash, and standing there to facilitate learning. You touch the table, period. An insignificant presence, a physical presence. That physical presence has a reason why it's there and so, but that's not part of your touch. In sight, it's a completely different experience. In sight, you don't see a piece of wood, and then from this wood you see the form, and the form is a table. You see a table, not only you see a table in its full context. You see the life element in the table. As a matter of fact, this is how come you see it. Because touch, I'm deviating slightly, but please follow. In touch, there is a reason why we feel it, because we are actually affected by it. We have the sensitivity, and they feel the touch. Inside, there's nothing that affects us. We can open our eyes and close our eyes without any effect. What then makes it so clear? And what is the sensation of sight? Sensation of sight is that like I said, you would see it not by its presence, which is a limited presence, but which demands an explanation. Why is it here? What's the truth behind it? Not in sight. In sight, you see the whole truth at once. You see it from its inception. Since you see it from its inception, you don't need any proof that it is there. You see the reality itself. Proof is necessary only to something that does not self-explain, self-substantiate. You need proof. But something that's self-substantiating, you see the reality itself. This is the experience of sight. And therefore, even though you see miles, and miles, each mile is a separate entity, but you don't see it as a separate entity. You don't see it cumulatively. You see it from its reality perspective. Reality includes everything. This is a proper moshel for what we're learning now. In what way? On the one hand, you see you see space. Space is composed of many pieces of space. Just like Seichel, the chochmah. Chochmah has all the details that are contained in the chochmah. And yet, it is not limited to seeing it by detail. It sees the entire reality and it combines everything together. This is the principle that we're saying over here, that the kav really has protim, has details, but you don't see it through its details. You see it through its whole. You see it from a beligvul perspective. This is the difference between the koiches makifim, the rotzen and oneg, and chochmah. Chochmah sees the entire reality as just as rotzen and oneg. Except in rotzen and oneg, there are no protim at all. There's no composite elements. In chochmah, there are composite elements, but these composite elements are completely illuminated by the reality of rotzen and of the nefesh itself, of the beligvul. This is the pshat. He says, "Arehu shehu me'ein ho'in sof." Different. The kal is me'ein ho'in sof. It has an element of ein sof. What is oil ein sof? Oil ein sof does not ask, where do you come from? How come you're here? What makes you be? Because it represents the ein sof itself. That's it. Bagam, and then also, furthermore, we are just going to say these few words. Bagam, and then also, yesh boy koyach atzmus. In this kav there is the koyach atzmus, the koyach of the atzmus itself. We discussed this in the past because of its connection to the atzmus. Yesh boy koyach atzmus. That, what time is it? Oh, we still haven't done
it.
What?
You finish it this morning?
Koyach ha'atzmus, again, we discussed it in the past. Just to get us a little taste of it. What does it mean, koyach ha'atzmus? So, in our understanding that we can conceptualize an atzmi, an etzem, this is like a melech, the king. Like you always explain that a very extremely wealthy person does not compare to the king, because his accessibility and to everything is via the fact that he possesses the means by which to get it. The king gets everything not because he possesses the means by which, because he wants it. It's automatically there. And the Gemara gives us a very precise demonstration of this phenomenon. The Gemara says, Omar Malko, Okar Tura. Anybody familiar with this quote? Omar Malko, Okar Tura.
The king commands, the mountain moves.
That's right. The king says, the mountain moves. He uproots the mountain. How did the beast saying uprooting him? This is a phenomenal demonstration of the principle of an etzem. It happens automatically because that's the way he wants it. It doesn't have to be then funneled through the various channels by which you move a mountain. It moves. This is more of it than Ayin safe, than Ayin safe. It automatically melts away and dissipates. Like in Chassidus, and even in Tanakh, it says that Uriah Hiti, I don't know if you know the story. Uriah Hiti, he transgressed on a capital sin. What was a capital sin? Capital sin is he was talking to the king, he was talking to David, and he referred to the soldiers on the front, and he distinguished between the simple soldier and Yoav and Tzruya and the 5-star general. In front of the king, there's no difference between the general and the foot soldier. If he, in speaking this way, he sensed a difference. He sensed a difference. That means he did not really appreciate. He wasn't bottled to the king in the way that he has to be bottled to the king. In the presence of the king, there is no difference between this general and the foot soldier. This constitutes a merida b'malchus. This is the principle on etzem. There is no way, there's no functional element in this. This is just the reality itself. This is it for this morning.
Thanks, guys. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Okay, there is a breeze. The breeze was moved. Everybody's aware, right? To Frankel show.